Hello, dear friends. Now, I would like to welcome you to the discussion of uh, lecture session part 3, Unit 3 Introduction to Insurance. Connected to this Unit 3, in the previous lecture, we have already discussed about the differences between insurance and gambling, differences between insurance and hedging contract, then insurable risk, and all that. Now, in this unit, we would like to discuss the important further aspects of the insurance, that is, essentials of insurance contract, Indian insurance industry, historical framework of insurance, that how insurance came into existence, which is the requirement of your syllabus. Now, let us understand the essentials of insurance contract. Already we have studied the characteristics of insurance contract. In that we have seen insurance is a contract. A contract is one where two parties will come into a consensus, they agree upon, they exchange a promises that which is legally binding, which is influential. So for an insurance contract, there are mainly two parties, insured and the insurer, where the insurer agrees to compensate the loss happening to the insurer at the time of the loss. Compensation will be paid at a cost of premium, which is received by the insured to the insurance company. Now, apart from this, there are some essentials of a contract which we consider insurance contract special essentials are called as principles of insurance contract. There are basically 7 important principles which needs to be satisfied while entering into insurance contract. The first important among them is the principle of utmost good faith. The second one is the principle of insurable interest. The third one is the principle of indemnity. The fourth one is principle of contribution. Fifth one is the principle of subrogation. Sixth one is the principle of a proximate cause, and the seventh one is the principle of loss minimization. Let us understand the first one, principle of utmost good faith. As we have already discussed while discussing the characteristics of the insurance contract, that both the parties, that is the insurer and insured, should disclose the materialistic fact relating to the agreement on which they are entering into. This principle is deeply discussed in this utmost good faith essential that talks about that both the parties must make a full disclosure, their full declaration of all the material facts in the insurance proposal. This is called as ubrima fidei in a Latin word, that is utmost good faith. Suppose I will give an example. If at all a person wants to take a health insurance policy from particular insurance company, it is his bound duty that he should disclose all the materialistic fact relating to his health. He should not give a wrong information, or he should not hide any information which is necessary to be disclosed. He should give all the information in a good faith. Anything which is given without the with the knowledge that he has that particular information but does not share, it does not become a good faith. Good faith is one, whatever the materialistic fact that the person knows about his health, he should declare it in a good faith. Declare it in a good faith. It means that he should disclose about the perfect age that he has. He should disclose about any pre-existing diseases he has, like blood pressure, diabetes. If he knows it, he should declare. If he does not know, then it is not a problem. But even if he knows it and does not disclose with an intention of deceiving the insurance company, then there is a breach of good faith, at most good faith point. So here, the insurance company expects that the client should give the clarification of all the information relating to the health. Now, if the person knows that he has a blood pressure and gives a false information that he is healthy enough, and after the contract is over, and if it is identified by the insurance company because of the pre-existing diseases like blood pressure, if any hospitalization is made after the contract and insurance company proves it that he has not given a information in a good faith, then compensation will not be made to the person for hospitalization expenditures. So this is what the breach of ubrima fidei or utmost good faith. Therefore, it is expected that the client should clearly give the information relating to the materialistic facts, whatever he knows, to the best of his knowledge and belief to the insurance company. And on the other hand, also insurance company should also clarify all the materialistic fact relating to the contract of insurance, the compensation procedure, compensation calculation, then the procedure of claiming the policy and everything. So here, sometimes with not intention of hurting the insurance company, if the client does not give the information because he himself doesn't know the information, then it is called utmost good faith. He has given information in a good faith, but because of non information, or because of not having the perfect knowledge about him, the particular things, he has not declared. It is not an intention to deceive the other person. That is why insurance company in such cases will try to get all the information from the client with the detailed questionnaire filled in, or with the specific health examinations and all that, with the experts advices and all that. They try to clarify it if the client doesn't know information about himself. This is what trying to satisfy the utmost good faith. So this has to be present in every insurance contract. The second principle is an insurable interest, that any person cannot take insurance on all the assets which does not belong to him. It means that insurable interest refers to insurable interest refers to the reasonable concern of a person to obtain an insurance for any individual or property against unforeseen events such as death, losses, etc. It means that there should be a concern of a person to the asset. For example, a health policy is taken on the personal health or the dependent's health by the client. Dependent refers to the person on whom his life is dependent. Like he can take an insurance policy of the health of the wife, or he can take the insurance policy on the health of the parents, or he can take the insurance policy on the health of the children below the age of 25 years in his in the name. But he cannot take the insurance policy on the health of a brother-in-law, sister-in-law, or a distant relative, because the existence of these people will not give any financial gain to them, or the health hazards does not create a kind of a financial expenditure to the person, legally speaking, in these relations. Therefore, health policy can be taken on only on those healths whose are directly having a concern to the person, and financial loss will be happening if the hazard happens. On the same way, any property that if you want to take a insurance can be taken on the property which belongs to the person. For example, I can take an insurance policy or fire insurance policy on the house only if I am the owner of the house. I cannot take a fire insurance policy on the rented house, because rented house does not belong to me. Possession is there with me, but I am not the owner of it. Any destruction or loss happen to the asset, it does not create a financial loss to me, because the financial loss will be suffered by the owner. That is how there is no insurable interest. What the insurable interest talks about is there should be a concern to the property on which the insurance we are taking. Concern in the sense that the existence of the property or existence of that particular asset should give a financial benefit, or destruction of that should give to the financial loss. So therefore, we can take an insurance policy to compensate the loss if the asset destroys. This is what we call as insurable interest. The third one is principle of indemnity. The principle of indemnity uh, is compensating the loss happened to the insured by the insurance company. Indemnity asserts that on the happening of a loss, the insured shall be put back into the same financial position as he used to occupy immediately before the loss. It means that compensation should be reinstating the loss, that is avoiding the loss and making the person's asset or the property or the business in a normal way. Indemnity will arise only when the loss happens. If the loss does not happen, indemnity does not come into picture. That is why in general insurance contracts, loss if happens only the compensation shall be made to mitigate the loss, but not for anything else. If the loss does not arise, there is no any financial loss to the party, insured person. Hence, insurance company's liability does not arise to help him at all, because indemnity refers to only compensating the loss. So all the pure risks are insured on the contract or on the principle of indemnity. If the loss happens, only compensation will be made. If the loss does not happen, no compensation shall be made. For example, a vehicle which meets an accident, if it meets an accident, loss arises. So the liability of the insurance company will arise to indemnify the loss only if the accident happens. If the accident does not happen, then there is no question of indemnification at all. This is what a pure risk. So this is the principle which applies to general insurance contract. But this principle does not apply to life insurance contracts, because in life insurance contract, indemnity will be made. Indemnity principle does not apply, because in case of the death of the person, indemnification normally happens. But in most of the life insurance contracts, even if the loss does not happen, even if the death does not happen with the person, but the expiry of the time or a particular period agreed upon, if it expires, the uh, accumulated premium will be returned to the person along with the interest after the expiry of the time, even if the person does not die. So it is not working on the ground of indemnity purely, only in case of life insurance. But in other than life insurance contracts, all general insurance contracts like motor insurance, then home insurance, then any kind of fire insurance, business related insurances and all that, will be working on the principle of indemnity. The third important principle is the principle of contribution. The principle of contribution. What is a principle of contribution? There is a condition that the loss happened to the insured should be compensated only to the extent of the loss. At any given point of time, insured should not make a profit out of the loss suffering. Suppose if an insured person takes an insurance policy on the asset with the two different insurance companies, then if the loss happens, there is a common rule that both the insurance companies should compensate the loss happened, where the insured party cannot claim the full amount of the loss from both the insurance companies. The insured person can claim the loss with a contribution from both the insurance companies. Suppose, for example, if A takes fire insurance on his house from X company and Y insurance company, and if the fire happens and 10,000 to 1 lakh rupees loss happens to him, then in this case, insurance company will compensate him only 1 lakhs. He cannot get 1 lakh from each company, from X and Y, both. He cannot get 2 lakhs. Compensation amount is only 1 lakh. In such cases, both the insurance companies will contribute according to the premium what he pays, either in the ratio or equally. That is what the principle of contribution says. It is implemented when the multiple insurance policies are covering the same property or the loss in one or two companies. The total payment for the actual loss is proportionally divided among all the insurance companies. At any given point of time, out of the loss, profit cannot be earned by the insured, because insurance contract builds indemnification for the loss, not for profit at all. That is what the principle of contribution talks about. But this principle of contribution is applicable only to general insurance contracts. It does not apply to life insurance contract. For example, if the person takes life insurance, death benefit related things from two different insurance companies. Say, for example, he pays a premium of 1 lakh per year to Kotak Mahindra for a sum assured value of 10 lakhs, and pays 1 lakh rupees contribution per year to the life insurance corporation. And if he dies, then both the insurance companies will pay 10 lakhs rupees each to him. So he will get 20 lakhs rupees. The reason is the loss happened by the death to the dependents cannot be evaluated in the market values. There is no market value for the human lives. So therefore, there is an exception to this rule, that a principle of contribution applicability to life insurance corporation. But other than life insurance corporation, this principle is applicable to all the assets whose financial evaluation can be made based on the market values. Loss can be easily financially calculated. That is what the principle of contribution talks about. Now the next one is principle of subrogation. What is a subrogation? Subrogation means taking over the property. In simple words, the subrogation principle in insurance means when the insurer, that is insurance company, pays the full compensation for any insured loss of the insured property, the insurance, that is the insurance company, holds the legal right, that is a claim of the insured property. Suppose, for example, if an insurance policy is taken on the car by the client to the value of 10 lakhs rupees and meets an accident, and in the accident the full car gets damaged. In such cases, he claims the full value of the car from the insurance company. Insurance company, if it pays 10 lakhs rupees to the insured, then all the left out property of the car belongs to the insurance company. They will take over all that. They can either sell it or do anything. Possibilities of selling it or claiming it to the values on that. So right arises with the insurance company. So subrogation refers to if the full value of the compensation is made to the person on the asset insured, then the asset will be taken over by the insurance company. If he claims only for the loss happened, then indemnification is made only to the repair of the car, then repair cost will be borne only, not the 10 lakh value of the car. This is what we call as law of subrogation. This law of subrogation rule is also not applicable for insurance company. In life insurance contract, the basic reason is if the person dies, in the hospitalization cases and all that, if the person dies, the full value of the compensation is paid to the dependents, and no body is taken over by the insurance company. The body will also be given to the dependents only for cremation purposes. This is how the law of subrogation does not arise. But the assets or any kinds of property insured under the general insurance contract, this law of subrogation applies. Suppose if there is a double insurance, that is multiple insurance, what we call as the previous one, the previous one, principle of contribution. If two insurance companies pay a compensation to the fullest value of the asset, then in case of subrogation, both the insurance companies will take over the property, dividing the remaining value of the assets equally. This is what subrogation principle talks about. The sixth one is the principle of proximate cause. What is the proximate cause? It means that insurance contract, when it is taken for a particular risk, the loss should have happened out of that risk related causes only. That is the hazards and perils should have arisen because of that particular risk only. If the risk arises not on the uh, agreed risk, but other than the unexpected risk, in such cases, compensation will not be made to the party. That is, proximate cause is concerned with how the actual loss or damage happened to the insured party and whether it is a result of an insured peril. The insurance will be made only to the loss happened out of the proximate peril cause agreed upon. It means that in simple terms, if a house is taken an insurance for against a fire risk, the fire risk will be covered only, the risk will be only fire. Proximate cause will be a loss happened to the house because of the fire, either by short circuit or by any other reason. If the fire gets into the building and building gets lost, in such cases compensation will be made by the insurance company. But if the house gets flood and in the flood house gets smashed, flood, if it is not covered under the insurance contract, the proximate cause is not the uh, flood, the proximate cause is fire. Then in such cases insurance company will not pay any compensation for the damaged loss happened to the building due to flood. This is what we call as principle of proximate cause. In this case, the causes of the causes which are creating the losses will be taken into consideration while creating the insurance contract. So this is commonly easily identified in general insurance contract, but it is also applicable to life insurance corporation to certain extent, because if the is taken, the life insurance policy is taken on the health for accidental deaths, and if the person dies with a heart attacks not by accident in the cars and all that, then he will not be compensated covered under the loss, because proximate cause for the death is not the accident, but it is other than that. Therefore insurance compensation will not be paid even in life insurance policy also. Therefore, when the party is taking an insurance policy, he will discuss, clearly define about the proximate causes. That is what the point involved. Next one is the principle of loss minimization. This is a liability on the part of the insured person, insured. That insurance company expects that the effort should be made by the insured when the loss is happening to minimize the loss. If he does not make any effort to minimize the loss, the intention becomes very clear that he wants to claim a huge amount of compensation for the loss and deceiving the insurance company. That is why insurance company is binding on the insured person that whenever the loss is happening, he will try to minimize the loss as much as possible, so that his interest to protect the asset will arise. The main purpose of insurance contract is not to get the compensation, but to safeguard himself against the risk happening. Therefore, he should make an attempt to reduce the loss. Reduce the loss, that is minimization of the risk. This principle says that the insured must take all the necessary steps to curtail the loss of the insured property. In the case of events like fire, blast, etc., it is the main responsibility of the insured to act diligently and take all the steps to cut losses to the insured property. If the effort of the person is not identified to minimize the loss, in such cases insurance company will doubt on the person that intentional loss might have been created to get the benefit of the compensation. This is what point will be very clear. Therefore, an attempt should be made to minimize the loss. This is applicable for general insurance contract very easily, and even to the life insurance also it is made a little applicable here. For example, if the person takes an insurance policy on his life and commits a suicide, the dependents will not be paid any compensation because the loss is invited with an intention itself. He did not make any attempt to survive with a quality life. That is how the principle of minimization of the loss is not made and does not meet the requirement. Therefore, insurance compensation will not be made to the person who commits the suicide. And even if the person is trying to suffering from any diseases, a treatment should be initiated by himself to protect his health. But if he does not make any attempt, there is a clear vision that he wanted to claim. It is as good as suicide itself. So it is a very complicated point to clarify in the life insurance contract. But most of the life insurance contracts are also subject to the point of minimization of principle of loss minimization. So these are the various principles that are considered to be the essentials of insurance contract. Now we will discuss the point relating to functions of insurance. What are the basic functions of insurance? Why insurance contract is required, and what activities does it do? These functions of the insurance are classified into primary function and the secondary function. The primary function is the main important function, that is provision of that is certainty of the payment at the time of the loss, and the provision of protection, risk sharing, that is provision of protection, risk sharing. These are the two primary functions. First one is, what is that? Provision of certainty of the payment at the time of the loss. Whenever the loss happened to the insured, a provision has to be made to compensate the loss by the insurance company, so the company cannot tell the insured person that there is a fund shortage with the insurance company, it will be postponed later on, payment will be made. No, the insurance company's main function is to compensate the loss as soon as it has happened to the insured. So when it has happened, a procedure is followed to identify whether the loss has happened naturally or intentionally. For that, a particular process is taken place, a particular period of time is defined to compensate. After that, compulsorily the compensation should be issued by the insurance companies. There is some delays in certain cases when there is a clarification is not there relating to the loss happened. Sometimes the party may be expecting a huge amount of compensation and may be approaching the court for the clarifications, and direct court direction will be given to the insurance companies regarding the valuation of the property and the valuation of the loss and compensation to be made. In such cases there will be a delay till the court order comes. But at any point of time when the court order comes, the insurance company cannot delay the payment of the compensation. It has to pay immediately on the spot. That is the main function, because the basic objective of insurance is to indemnify the loss happened to the insured. Second one is a provision of protection, risk sharing. What is that, the provision of protection risk sharing? The insurance functions basically on accumulation of the premium from several people who are exposed to a same kind of a risk. The insurance company will work only on the ground that the probability of the loss is not 100% to all the people paid the premium. The probability will be less than the 100% possibility. Say, for example, if there is 2% or 4% probability, then out of the 100 people paying the premium, 2 or 3 people will be in need of the suffer from the loss and needs the compensation. So the accumulated premium will be used to compensate. If nothing happens, then 100% of the premium becomes the base of the uh, compensation fund for the insurance company, and it will be carried for the next particular years. So like that, the risk will be shared among the members. And if 100% of the probability happens, all the people insured dies, or all the people insured property gets damaged, in such cases there is no point of compensation arises. There is no point of compensation because insurance company cannot compensate, because 100% premium whatever it has collected from all the people having lost that particular, it will be returned back to the premium values only. No compensation shall be made. But such things are happening very rarely because the probability of loss calculation is always minimum. That is why the insurance contract is initiated by the insurance company. There are actuaries who are always thinking of that particular things, calculating the risk and developing the insurance proposals. That is why this does not arise. But provision of risk sharing, this pooling of the risk is normally done by the insurance company. This is one more function. The secondary functions are again the prevention of the loss, provision of capital, improvement of efficiency, ensuring welfare of the society. The insurance contract benefits indirectly to the nation in general. One is it helps to prevent the losses of the insured people, insured properties, or insured lives, and it will give a financial strength to the sufferers to come out of the loss and do the good business. So indirectly, it helps the nation also. Indirectly, it develops the entrepreneurial abilities also, because entrepreneurs are prone to incur the losses many a time. Whenever the loss happens, they have one basic support for them, that is the insurance contract. Whenever the loss happens, they can get the compensation and does not suffer out of that particular loss, and they can reattempt once again to come out of that and work with the efficiency. This is what another function that an insurance company does. The third one is provision of capital. The insurance company, when it collects the premium, as we have already seen that the probability of the loss is not 100% in any given case, many a time. If it is 2-3%, then the accumulated premium with the insurance companies will be in a huge money, and this money will be invested by these insurance companies in some investment proposals, either in the stock market or in investment in the companies, or it will give the loans or advances to the new upcoming industries, and it earns a interest on that. So capital formation is also made by the insurance companies. For example, life insurance corporations and general insurance corporations are developing a huge amount of capital and giving these loans and advances to the as a seed money or project proposals of the key turnkey projects and all that. They are investing money, and there is a huge returns on the investment also. This is helping to develop the capital of the insurance companies. The third one is improvement of efficiency. How that improvement of efficiency happens? When the insurance contract is undertaken by the insured companies, their efficiency will automatically increase because they will not be under the pressure of the loss. They will easily work with the fearless kind of a thing. So automatically it improves the efficiency of the industries. The fourth one is ensuring the welfare of the society. It helps to ensure the welfare because when the industries are growing, where they are not sick by the losses happening, when the health of the people is increasing because health benefits are given by the insurance companies, and all that good amount of treatment is given by the hospitals under the insurance contracts to the needy people who are not having sufficient money to pay for the health expenditures. So these are all giving them a welfare to the society. Therefore, in most of the countries, insurance is not a business. It is considered to be a welfare activity, societal activity. Therefore, especially health insurance is considered to be a non-business activity itself. That is what the functions of insurance. Now, if you see Indian insurance industry, history of the Indian insurance, how it came into, the concept of pooling resources and utilizing it in times of emergency is mentioned in Indian mythological stories itself. If you go through the mythological scriptures like Manusmriti written by Manu and Yajnavalkya Rishi's Dharma Shastra, there is a mention about natural calamities like fire, flood, etc., and handling these risks through accumulated resources. Even in Chanakya Kautilya's Arthashastra also mentions about pooling resources for protecting the sailors and traders when they suffer from sea perils. So you can identify the existence of this insurance concept in Indian mythology and Indian history long back before the BC itself, that is before the Christ birth itself. So it is as old as the civilization of Indian this thing dynasties, especially the Hindu the scriptures, especially the Indus Valley civilization has the full knowledge about this insurance contract, but this has not come in a materialistic form. But this has came when the renaissance came into, when the industrial revolution happened in the country. Automatically this insurance business has become more effective, and most of the people started using it. If you see the historical framework of the insurance with the dates and all that, the first Indian insurance company established in the year 1880 by Anita Bhavsar in Kolkata. It is named as Oriental Insurance. The main objective was to provide insurance services to European marine traders' activities. An Indian entrepreneur, Anita Bhavsare, has developed that particular concept of insurance in 1818 itself and started providing the insurance services to the European marine traders, especially the people who are doing a business on sea routes. The second point you can easily note in that history, the life insurance provided by the Britain insurance companies to Indians were charging huge premiums. Therefore, in 1870, Bombay Mutual Life Insurance Society came into existence and became the first Indian insurer. In the 1880, Bombay Mutual Life Insurance Company came into existence because just to compete with the British insurance companies who were charging the huge amount of profits for the Indian people to provide the life protections. The oldest existing insurance company in India is the National Insurance Company, which was founded in 1906 and it is still in business. National Insurance Company is still working in India, which is established in the year 1906. In the year 1920, the Life Insurance Companies Act and the Provident Fund Act were passed to regulate the insurance business. The Life Insurance Companies Act 1912 made it necessary that the premium rate tables and periodical valuation of the companies should be certified by an actuary. It means the concept of actuary came into existence in the year 1912. Uh, Insurance Companies Act through the year 1912. So actuaries are to be appointed to the uh, evaluate the properties and all that. So this is happened in our 19th century itself. The history of insurance sector in post independence area, if you see the post independent era, that is after the British exit from India, there is a lot of changes happened in the insurance sector. If you can identify with some notable milestones, that is the government of India issued an ordinance on 19th January 1956, that is nationalizing the life insurance sector, and life insurance corporation came into existence in the same year. That is, in 1956 the nationalization of life insurance sector was made. That is, government has taken over all the private management of insurance companies in its hand and nationalized it in the 1956 on 19th January. So where the insurance sector becomes a public sector. Then insurance companies corporation LIC absorbed 154 Indian, 16 non-Indian insurance companies, as also 75 provident societies and 245 Indian and foreign insurers in all. So put together around 154 Indian insurance companies, 16 non-Indian foreign insurance industries, and 75 provident fund societies and all that. 245 Indian and foreign insurances put together, all life insurance corporation was established. In 1972, the general insurance business got nationalization. Uh, the nationalization, that is act, was passed by the Indian Parliament, and consequently general insurance business was nationalized with the effect from 1st January 1973. 170 insurers were amalgamated and grouped into four companies, namely National Insurance Company Limited and the New India Assurance Company Limited, the Oriental Insurance Company Limited, and the United India Insurance Company Limited. The General Insurance Corporation of India was incorporated as a company in 1971, and it commenced business on 1st January 1973. It means that General Insurance Corporation was consisting of four important partners of its own with a one single ambit name called General Insurance Corporation of India in the year 1973. Then, if you consider the history of Indian insurance in the post liberalization, that is, after the liberalization and privatization policy that India has undergone in the year 1990s, you can find out there are some changes happened in the insurance sector. Till 1990, there was only two players in the sector: life insurance and general insurance. But because of privatization, many more companies came into existence. In the year 1990, the privatization of insurance sector was made and allowed private players into in insurance sector. In 1991, foreign direct investment was allowed to the extent of 26% in the insurance sector. But in 1914, it is increased to 49%. Now the government of India is thinking to make it 100% under regulated route. So here, there are two ways of entry of the foreign direct investment in the insurance sector. One is called government route, another one is called automated route. In an automated route, no permission is required to be taken to establish a joint sector insurance business in India. Any foreigner, if he is interested to invest money in the insurance business to the extent of 26%, remaining percent of the money will be invested by the Indian company. Put together, insurance company can be established without taking any special provision. But this is increased in 2014 to the extent of 49%. It means that any foreign investor, if he wants to invest money in insurance sector for a long-term business, foreign direct investment in this investment in the industry for a long period. It is not withdrawn within a specific agreed time. For example, the contract will exist for 10 years, 15 years. Till then, the investment will be made by the foreigner and kept hold in the business. So 49% is an automated route. Till 49% investment by the foreigner does not require any special permission from the government. But if it is more than 49%, then special permission has to be taken through the government route. If government allows, investment shall be made. But now the government is thinking to make this 49% as 100% in the insurance business, that fully owned foreign companies can be established in India to serve the people, because the coverage of the insurance market is hardly 25% in India. Still 75% requires the insurance services to be provided, which the existing companies are not able to do it. In 1999, the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority (IRDA) was established to regulate and develop the insurance industry, and was incorporated in April 2000. This means that in 2000, Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India came into existence, which is fully having a responsibility of controlling, managing, and directing the insurance business in India. Now, the government is interfering through IRDA in the insurance sector. Otherwise, IRDA is the whole and sole responsible organization as a representation of the government to control the insurance business in India. This is one more important development in the history of Indian insurance company. When IRDA came into existence, lot of controlling activities tools were developed in the insurance sector, and the insurance sector started developing with a high speed in Indian economy. In the year 2000, the subsidiaries of the general insurance were delinked and are allowed to operate independently, in the sense that four insurance companies, general insurance companies, that National Insurance Company and all, which were under the ambit of general insurance, were delinked and they were allowed to operate separately. Oriental Insurance Company Limited, New India Assurance Company Limited, National Insurance Company Limited, and United Insurance Company Limited now are independently functioning in India after 2000. So, general insurance companies, one of the companies of the general insurance companies, it is not having a group of these companies. So, each company is trying to have its own strategies to develop the insurance services in the India. So, this is what the history relating to Indian insurance sector. So question may be asked in the examination, discuss the post independent developments, post independent era developments in insurance sector. Or question may also be asked in the examination, discuss the development of insurance sector in India after liberalization, post liberalization development in India. Short note may also be asked on this. And there may be a historical framework of the insurance. Question may be discuss the evolution of the insurance sector in India. Evolution talks about, it will be for 10 marks, maybe in the examination. That's why please prepare for all this. So here our lecture series part 3 of unit number 3 will get over. So I thank all the students for your patience listening. Friends, please prepare well for the exams. So there will be a online test that I'm going to take shortly. I will announce the dates and all that. We will get in touch through this Zoom app. Thank you. Thank you all.